I'll give you that box shortly. What's that? Oh, if you don't mind.
Just drop it. I feel honored. There's a bee here!
Found a queen. So the bees certainly smell that spirit of spring out there. They are bearding everywhere. So I think what I'll do is I'll take a truckload out tonight, maybe 2, and then get into them tomorrow just to heft some hives to see how they are in feed stores, because I'm a little bit concerned about how much feed they have inside, and then make my panic decision after that. See, look at that. This is what I mean by a hive that is running. Just running all across the face. They just smell spring. They want out. It's warm. They're just running everywhere. So I don't know. The forecast it's not so exciting anymore. They kind of cooled it right down. And the nights are a little bit cooler. So I'm not too anxious to move on that. I have the yards cleared out now, which is good. So maybe what I'll do is I'm just going to fill this truck up and make my decision after I get the truck loaded up. Maybe take a load out. So I'm out in the yards. They're staying nice and firm for me. I'm not getting stuck, which is great. I'm just peeking into my hives and I'm quite pleased. There seems to be lots of bees in these hives, except I'll show you they're hefting pretty light. I'm gonna have to get feed onto, I'm gonna call carry in tomorrow, which is unfortunately Sunday, but we have to get feed onto these guys right now. And I'll just show you. Just setting down my beehives, tipping them back, and I'll be doing this later on. Count the frames. These guys are a box of bees, but they're extremely light. Like, I can feel that. So there'll be a bit of honey left in the sides of this hive, but I have to get feed to them right now. This guy is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 frames of bees, and I can see that they're chewing on some of the canola honey. And they are extremely light. They have more weight on this side. This is where the cluster is. Which means I'm going to work overtime now to get these girls out, because I kind of know that we have some hives dangerously low in stores. So I'll work well into tonight, and we'll drop feed onto those hives. We'll probably give them a full, small gallon pail on every single hive, so we don't have time to heft all these guys. So we'll just go blanket everybody, and that's great. We'll get back beekeeping, and hopefully the sun comes back on Monday, maybe get some flight, and then we're into the patties. So as you can see, it's snowing. I'm certainly getting tired of snow, especially this time of year, when I just want it to be all gone already. But it's an odd feeling driving down the road here and the sight of snow. It's comforting. It's really weird how much I despise snow, but yet I see it and it's a comforting feeling. Another cool and cloudy day today. Nothing really to get me excited to do any bee work. But I come down to my bee yard, and what is it, 3 degrees right now? And it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the bees are flying like crazy. Well, I shouldn't say like crazy, but they are actively foraging. The supplement feeder has a lot of attention to it. I can hear, flight through the bee yard here. It's not a brilliant day, yet these bees are still actively foraging and getting what they need done. But I'm just not motivated enough to get into these hives to actually do any work. I should just bite the bullet and start anyways, because I need to get protein onto these guys. I need to drop honey frames into these guys, and I need to get my medications done, which is going to take a long time. Just it's a lot easier to motivate myself to do the work when it's sunny and the bees feel good, and they're actively foraging and But sun will come and we will start to get nice weather and we'll get that beekeeping spirit. And I want to show you the work we've done so far to feed these bees. A hive like that's not taking any, because I'm assuming that these guys have enough food inside. These guys are actively feeding. They have just finished that pail, so these guys needed the syrup. Same with these guys. Can you see that? Just a string of bees, a rope of bees going down. Those are colonies I wanted to target. There's about 30 or 40% of those hives that need the syrup right now to keep them going. So we've got the syrup onto them. Just keeping them alive because we want to make sure that they progress. They come out of the shed and we want them to start developing. So when they're short on any type of food, that is not good. Holy crap, pretty much every bee I own is flying right now. This is the 4th yard I've come to. I'm just dropping down some more ultra bee just to give them some more to chew on. And these girls are absolutely terrific. Up in flight, they just look absolutely awesome. There's 2 truckloads of bees here. And they are absolutely flying everywhere. This is one of the favorite times of the year for me. This first flight. These girls have been out here for over a week now. They haven't really had the opportunity to get out and actually fly like this yet. This is the first real nice day. And just look at them take advantage of the day. Just every one of these bees out stretching their wings. They're into the supplement feeder over there. Just demolishing it. Boy, it's these moments in time that I appreciate this business. There's a lot about this business that we hate, and that's okay to say. But it's at these particular points in time which the absolute tremendous brilliance comes out in these hives. This mass spectacle. This is what it's all about. This is my motivating factor. The term spring dwindling comes to mind. Cold, snow, wind. We need some weather to get some work done. These bees have to get out and fly. These trees need to come into bloom. Patience is a bitch. Well, it's 2 degrees and the bees are flying. And like I said earlier, we're gonna have to start pushing the boundaries on trying to get this work done, because we need to get these patties out. We need to get some protein onto these hives, just to give them something to work on to develop this nest. These guys are short on pollen stores, as I've been finding through my assessments. So what my idea is to give them some protein, just to give them something to chew on until the natural stuff starts flowing in, so they can develop their nest out. So I'm just, it's a cold day, so we're not able to do too much, but these guys are taking syrup still. And all we're doing really is just opening up the top of the hive, trying to push these bees down. And then we just make room for the patty we're putting in. Pretty quick work. Feels like November out here. So I just want to take a peek down into the nest to see if these guys are actually eating their protein patties. I'm going to do this so I don't get stung. Bees are on the syrup. As you can see, these bees are actively eating this patty. We're just out feeding protein patties again. We didn't quite get this yard finished before it snowed, so we're back and we're just about to finish it up this afternoon. So these hives have had a few days to chew on these patties. As you can see, they're drinking down the syrup. Just take a peek here to see if they're eating the patties. So here's some NutriBee. This has been on just for a few days. Look at them devour that. These little guys go at that. So last fall, I think you'll remember, I was kind of freaking out a little bit because my hives had shut down brood rearing middle of August, and I could not get them to initiate a brood nest past second last week of August. I could not get them into September. And I was doing my math, and my math is telling me these hives were destined for death. So as you'll remember, I was feeding NutriBee to the hives, trying to stimulate that queen to rear a brood nest later into September, to rear that winter nest into that September month, where typically those September bees are the ones that make the winter into spring. But I could not get my hives to rear brood past that middle of August date. I could not, no matter how much supplement I put on them or how I was feeding my syrup, no matter what I was doing, I could not get that nest to rear into September. But those bees were on the NutriBee and they were just devouring the stuff. You would think they would be translating that supplement into the brood nest, into some brood rearing, but they weren't. And what I think was going on there, the winter nest, those winter bees, they need to be well developed, they need to be fat, they need to have access to pollen coming in to provide them with the proteins and the fats they need to be able to store in their bodies to be able to get through the winter and provide the nourishment needed to rear that springtime nest. Because I had no pollen last fall, these hives were destined for failure. I was able to provide them with the nutrition they needed. They put on the fats, the proteins onto their bodies. They are developing a fantastic first round of brood here to be able to turn this winter nest into that spring nest. So I can confidently say now that all the efforts we had put into feeding supplement in the fall, I wasn't seeing it translate directly into the brood nest at that time, but now I'm seeing it was directly translating onto the fat stores of those bees, which they're using now to develop this beautiful, beautiful nest. So this is the reason why I put a lot of attention on nutrition and just to help provide a little more predictability within my apiary. So I'm working through the apiary and I come across this yard, which I don't know if you'll remember last fall, but later on in September, there's a little bit of criticism that I should have been feeding my apiary more supplement at the time. The comment was I was missing the opportunity. I missed my opportunity. So these 6 hives, dead, weak, were the hives that I had put supplement on late in September. And as you can see, they're either dead or extremely weak. They'll probably die. Now the reason why I'm pointing this out is because I just want to show that conditions between beekeepers, between different apiaries, are all different, and we have to be able to recognize and manage the conditions at hand. Just because one beekeeper is having success doing one thing within his apiary doesn't mean it is going to directly translate into what we're going to be doing in our own apiary. So we got to be extremely careful, especially with social media. You guys are watching these videos, everybody's on Facebook, and we're looking at everybody's success all the time and we're trying to mimic what they're doing. But what we have to do is we have to understand what's going on and then try to make that suit what we're doing within our environment and our conditions. Just because someone said I should have been feeding supplement to my hives late in the season to try to rear more brood would have resulted in catastrophic loss. And obviously that would have been the wrong decision. I know my apiary, I know my bees, I know how the hives set up their winter nest, I know how to promote the nutrition around developing a well-fed winter bee. I also know when to stop, and you got to know those boundaries. So I'm not sure what happened there, but all I know is tremendous success all the way down the line, all the way through the yard, all the way through the apiary, except for the 6 that I treated individual and specific to a beekeeper's suggestions. Working through my nuke yards today, just doing some queen assessments. The queens we assessed last summer were absolutely terrific. They were developing really nice nests, just the year run out on them. So they wintered a little bit smaller. They come out of winter where practically all of these nukes survived, which is extremely encouraging, just small. So what I'm doing is I'm going through, I'm just identifying the nukes that are adequate, leaving them alone. I'm identifying the nukes that are strong and marking them, and I'm identifying the smaller guys. So yeah, my crew is out putting medication strips in to control the mites. I have some university students that just finished their exams and they're keen on making money, so it feels really good to, have a lot of work getting done today. So what I'm doing, I'm just going down just to see the caliber of this queen, just to see what kind of integrity this nest holds. And what I'm looking for is a solid brood. I want to see that queen reaching out a little bit. I want to see those bees busy bringing in pollen. I want to see vigor is what I want to do. some bees on here. There's honey in this frame. You're bringing in pollen, which is really nice to see. Here's some brood. Excellent little brood nest here going. Reaching around with eggs, pollen, and fresh nectar, either nectar or the syrup that I provided them. And this side is mature larvae, just about to get capped. Very uniform. That's what I'm looking for. Uniformity is what we're looking for as beekeepers to determine, you know, the vigor of these queens. If they're giving her all, they'll lay, and they'll just lay a whole bunch of eggs all together and just keep going. And so those eggs are basically the same age. They all mature at the same time. They get capped over at the same time. It just looks like one uniform frame being developed out. That's what we're looking for. These guys have a bit of kick. I think I'll just leave them well alone. They're small, but look at that. That is absolutely brilliant. Again, a nice patch of brood surrounded by larvae, eggs, and pollen. So these guys are, and this, there she is. One of Carrie's queens. It's got it marked as a 10, so I don't know what that means, but it must mean good. So another one, solid brood. It's got some larvae around there, and then packed full of pollen all the way around. So this nest I'm just going to leave well alone. This is packed right full of pollen. These guys have been busy. A lot of what goes on within the colony here has to do with the caliber of the queen, the vigor of the queen. It's all about the queen. She'll use the population she has at hand at her disposal, and she will stretch the limits if she needs. She will develop that nest. It's all about the queen. So this is a small little nest. Like, it's, you know, it's hardly the size of a volleyball. In a single box, this nest would look terribly small, risking to be shaken out. I know this queen is good. She was made last year. We had assessment last year. The queens are fantastic. They went through small because of tough conditions. She's raising a terrific little nest. I'm going to keep these guys together. So we'll just, you know, pat these guys on the head, put them back, leave them alone. Leave them alone to make me money. So generally I'm not digging down into every single colony of mine. I don't have the time for that. Typically what I do is I tip these colonies back and I count the frames of bees underneath. Okay, so these guys are 4 frames of bees. Okay, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4 frames where the bees are filling the seams of the frame all the way down to the bottom. So I don't have to look any further than that. These guys are good. On to the next one. Not counting any. So let's see what's going on inside here. It's a little patch of brood. Eggs. Mature larvae. She's stretching it out. Her laying pattern looks good. This frame looks really good. Mature larvae, eggs. She's working it out like that. Just, there's not a lot of bees in this colony. There she is. She's a little blackie. Nice looking queen. She's laid a nice, neat and tidy little nest here, but there's just not enough bees. Okay, so I'm going to take this colony and we're going to place it over top of a strong unit to take that excess strength from the strong unit to boost this one up. Take this as a split. Make use of that queen. So I'm going to tag this one so we can identify it later when we come back. When we go through the apiary, we identify the great big colonies, the boxes of bees, you know, the 8 to 10 frames of bees. Those ones will be big enough that I will anticipate taking a full split off them. So what I'll do is I'll set this up in a single box with the queen, the little patch of brood, over top of that big nest with an excluder and a sheet of newspaper, and they'll slowly merge together, and the excess population from the bottom box will move up into the top. They accept this queen, that queen will be able to fully develop her nest, and then we can take it away as a full split. So as I work through the apiary, I'm assessing the hives for colony size, and I'm trying to identify the hives that I will be needing to focus on to add more space for a split. So I'm going underneath and I'm counting the frames of bees. So this one I'm counting as five frames. Okay, so this one I'm counting as a box of bees. I call them box of bees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What I'm going to do with this hive is I have a few nukes. We just went through the nuke yard, and I've identified nukes that the queen is showing some integrity, some potential, but the colony is just below the population threshold that, you know, they need a little bit of a boost, they need some assistance. So I'm going to use that queen to take the split from this colony. And I'll show you how I do it. So what I want to do is I want to keep the queen down in the bottom box, and I want to keep the top queen I put on here separate in the top box. So I'm going to keep them separate with a queen excluder. But when I put this other colony on top, I want to isolate them, and I want them to slowly merge together. So what I use is newspaper. A real neat trick. You don't need many sheets, just 1 or 2 sheets of newspaper over top of the colony. And then the excluder over top. What this does is it keeps the 2 queens separate with the queen excluder and the newspaper. As they chew through it very slowly, they'll merge the 2 colonies together, and the queen excluder will keep the 2 queens apart. So I have an empty box to go on top, put over top, so I filled it with 5 frames, honey, and some pollen. This is cleaned up from a dead out we pulled out. Then through the nuke assessments, we had identified the weaker colonies, but with the queens that are still salvageable. So there's the queen there. And then her frames of brood. So this queen has just enough brood going on. Looks real good. She's stretching out her resources. She's got eggs laid, freshly hatched eggs in there. Mature larvae, lots of pollen, just short on bees, just a little bit short on bees. So this will help boost this colony. We'll come back in, I don't know, 2 weeks, and we'll see how the merger has gone. It's really important that when we merge colonies like this, that we leave them the hell alone. A little bit of disturbance as they merge together might trigger them to get defensive and kill that other queen. So we want to keep them nice and quiet, nice and peaceful, so when they merge, they kind of become one unit. And then we'll come in after that queen starts establishing this nest in the top. And she starts exhibiting lots of her brood pheromones throughout the entire colony. We can go in and disturb her then, and everything will be fine. That's when we'll give her the second assessment to make sure she is actually viable. She is smaller, so there's a flag, there's a caution there. So we've just identified maybe some potential in the queen we want to salvage, and by doing that, we're boosting this colony with the surplus strength down from below. And what we're in fact doing, we're taking the split from the bees down below. We're taking all that surplus and bringing it up on top. So in 2 or 3 weeks we'll come by, these bees will come moved up, they'll be developing a beautiful nest up on top. We'll strip this away as the split off this colony. So we'll be stripping the surplus strength from this colony by boosting this salvage colony here. So you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm salvaging the queen, and by doing that, I'm boosting her hive by using surplus from a big strong nest. So I'm in fact taking away this split. Okay? So we have to make sure when we do this that because we're taking this surplus bees from here, instead of building a brand new colony with a brand new queen, we're using the surplus strength to boost this colony. So we have to make for damn sure that this queen is worth spending the resource on it. So I wish her luck, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. So I just tip them back, and I'm just looking for the number of seams that these bees are filling. So I'm looking here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's about 3 onto 4 frames of bees covered here at the bottom. So I count this as a 4 framer. These guys I'm just going to leave alone. No tag on them. Okay, now these guys, not sure if you guys can see this. I'm going to call this an 8 framer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A good colony size here. So these guys I'm anticipating have a fairly large brood nest inside. It's my assumption. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark them with a blue tag. This tells me that later in May, when we start adding space, that these guys will get a full box on top to allow that queen to grow into 2 boxes. So we're May 7th, and I'm looking at the calendar. The bees have obviously gone through their first hatch. They've replaced that winter nest, so they built that springtime cluster. And now they are working on developing that nest to move that colony into summer. So I'm counting my weeks, and it's looking like when you look at brood hatch in 3 weeks, so you throw it down in blocks. I know the queen doesn't lay like that, so everything's, quite progressive. But the first hatch is finished with, and we're on to the second round of brood. And that second round of brood is going to be hatching within this week, within next week, according to the calendar. And that means these hives that I identified as strong, or sporting a great big nest, are going to run out of space. So anything I see in here right now, this is the established spring nest, and anything in the brood frames is what's going to multiply this colony outwards. So the easy thing to do is just to put space on top, which we will probably do right away. It's just we've been having really cold weather, cold nights still. Like last night it got down to -3, was it? It's been windy. Daytime highs hardly reaching 10. So I've been holding off, trying to keep my nest tight because I like to keep my beehives. I like to keep that early spring development nice and tight, just to, you know, make for a warmer house for these bees to develop their spring nest in. Just give them less house to look after. So they've utilized this whole entire box. The nests look pretty good. It's just when this brood hatches, like, you can look at your brood frame and you can multiply it by 3. So 1 brood frame equals about 3 frames of bees. So this is a box of bees. We're just going to tip it to take a look at it. I'm assuming it's a box of bees because it has this blue tag on it. Now I'm going to assume there's at least 4 frames of brood in here ready to hatch. So we have a box of bees plus another, you know, possibly 10 to 12 frames of bees ready to hatch, which won't fit in this box anymore. So where are they going to go? And that's going to send this nest into instant swarm mode. So I got to get space on these guys. The easy is the space on top, but if this weather doesn't smarten up, we're going to have to put it underneath just to give the place for the bees to hang out underneath. I'm a big believer on maintaining the integrity of the beehive nest, especially in the early spring when there's these huge variable temperature fluctuations. That nest is going to go like this, and all of a sudden we give them space on top. There's that whole different house dynamics they have to take care of, and it's just their whole cluster dynamics change, and it induces stress. If it gets really cold and they really have to tighten up and they have all this house to look after, it just shocks them. And anytime a colony is shocked to stress, just like any other animal, they fall susceptible to disease or chemical exposure or whatever environmental factors going on outside the hive shows up inside this box. So I got to make my decision here. My guys are waiting for me to pull the trigger and to get some work done, but I don't want to compromise this nest. So what I'm doing, I'm just taking a peek through the apiary just to see what's going on. I'm not digging down in the nest because it's too bloody cold. Well, I'm going to dig down into this one just to show you guys what's going on and to show me what's going on. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tip this colony back, see what's going on underneath. And, you know, if they are packed full of bees and all of a sudden there's too many bees in this and they're thinking about swarming, there will be swarms, won't be swarm cells yet because they've hardly had enough nutrition to come in to promote that spirit. But they're going to be preparing cups and such, and we'll just see. And we'll just see at what we'll just try to see what the thinking is of this colony. And if they are overcrowded, then we got to get space on them. If they're just, you know, if they can buy me another 3 or 4 days of time, it looks like the weatherman's put nicer weather out at the end of the forecast again. Get me a few more days, and I can help this colony progress without influencing any type of stress on them and minimize my workload. So let's see what we've got inside this colony. Okay, so these guys, definitely a box of bees, as you can see. So any type of brood hatch, they're not going to have any space whatsoever. So I just want to look at the bottom of the frames here. I'll likely smoke them off the bottom just to see what they're thinking about. And I know this doesn't translate very well over my iPhone video here. I know you guys can't see what's going on here. What I'm seeing down here, maybe I'll move you closer. You're building burr comb on the bottom, which is good. Here's a cup. And these are cups until they lay an egg in there, until the egg hatches, and it becomes a cell. So that's just a cup still. So that's been freshly built. So there's not much going on in the bottom here. There's not even any drone comb going down here. So these guys aren't in a panicked situation yet. So that's what all my blue tags basically look like. Basically a box full of bees. Some of them are smaller, like maybe 6 to 8 frames of bees. These big boxes of bees, they can handle space on top a lot easier than the ones I assessed that are borderline. So that's basically why I'm fussing so much. So the sunshine came out nice and warm, and I've finally been able to pull the trigger to add seconds onto these hives. So we're going through, and I'm just reassessing all the blue tags. And we're going through a massive hatch right now. As you can see, these hives are exploding in growth. They need space. So simply put, I'm putting boxes on top, and I'm so relieved to be able to do such. This hive here is actually building some drone comb out in the bottom. Trying to hang out a little bit lower. These guys need space. So we're going through and we're adding seconds to all the blues, and we're also scraping down the tops. We haven't been into these colonies yet, so we're just cleaning up the tops before we add the seconds on. We've been chipping away at this job for the last week whenever we got the opportunity to get out to the yards. So the top's cleaned up. Give them a little bit of protein. And then the split box on top. So the split box, I have 2 foundations on each side. 2 honey, and then 4 empties in the center. And what we're doing is we're putting the space on. The bees are going to move up into the top box, clean it out. The queen's going to come up and lay in those 4 empty frames, create a nice little brood nest up on top. We're going to chase her back down, and we'll take this away as a split. As soon as I get some more syrup, there'll be a pail put on, and that's all there is to it. So I'm happy to be able to put the space on top, because naturally the queen wants to go up, lay up in this top box. If I had to put this box underneath, that'd be a place to hang the bees, but she's not going to lay down there the same as the way I want her to move up. So this really helps progress the work as we enjoy the nice weather. It is 9 o'clock in the morning, and we pulled into this bee yard to do some work. And as you can see, these foragers coming back are completely disorientated because we parked the truck right into their flight path. So they don't know what's going on. These guys have been out early. You can see the balls of pollen on them. This is one of the few early morning work days we've had these bees work on, which is so nice to see. So we've turned the corner now. Look at the streams of pollen coming in. That is gold. So we have immediately shifted from, conservation, trying to restrict space, to expansion, to growth, letting these girls go, just providing them space, just like that. I walk a very fine line, a fine balance, that when they start to grow and they get too big, they don't have enough space and they swarm. And now is the time we have to put space on them. I didn't put it underneath because I was procrastinating. I was waiting for this nice weather coming. Here it is. Now we have to have the boxes. We need the space on there. So we are busy. We're putting the space out. We're allowing these bees to expand and grow. Now we're instantly behind. Now we're just trying to keep ahead of this tremendous growth. I can see the pollen coming in from here, just streaming into these hives. So this is what my yards typically look like. We have all the medium, smaller hives that we got to work through next week, and the hives we identified as splits. And I want to show you, we put these on yesterday and we had run out of feed, so we're coming back, we're topping up these colonies to draw pails on to finish up the yard. So these guys are into the feed already. We added seconds yesterday and the bees have moved up into these frames. So I'm seeing frames covering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames of bees up top, because that's the amount of frames that we gave them. So these hives have moved some of their population straight up and started housekeeping this top box, which has instantly relieved the pressure within this hive. So it'll be pulling the bees off the bottom bars because of congestion and moving them up. And they'll be cleaning these out. And I bet you within, if the queen isn't already up here, the queen will start laying, you know, probably right now. So while we work through the apiary, we continually call out, you know, the weak and the small colonies, you know, leaves us with these dead spots. So what we do, it's nice having these little 5-frame nukes on hand, because what we'll do is we'll come around and we'll drop these 5-frame nukes into this spot. And these guys, you know, they're running a frame and a half of brood, you know, a real decent small little nest. These little guys are really, you know, holding their own, and they're just ready to take that next step into expansion. But we're going to drop them down into this dead spot, and then through the bee work today, we're able to, you know, gather up a few boxes of brood from our beehives, brood and bees. So this is surplus that we collected today. So nice little sheets of brood with bees on them. And we're going to use this brood, the surplus brood, to boost these little nukes. You'll see, just see what's cooking down here. So I find the longer I keep bees, the more of these little tricks that I start employing to manage workload and just fighting that continual attrition of our apiary. Just trying to fight back, trying to keep these dead spots full of bees. And one of those, you know, is to make up nukes. Just keep on making nukes. We make up these queen cells, and with any type of strength, we just keep on filling the boxes with brood, drop cells in, have these little units go, and taking advantage of my indoor wintering shed, I can winter smaller units inside there. So these guys come through really small. You've probably seen a video I had earlier, and I'm looking at, you know, little clusters smaller in the size of a volleyball, eh? So they are able to rear enough brood within that space to switch over their winter nest, get them into spring. So here's the spring nest going on right now. They've been able to expand because it's a little bit warmer now, although I'll argue that. But anyways, so now she's using the bees within this nest, and she's stretching the capability of the bees within that nest to be able to rear as much brood as they possibly can. So this gets them into that next stage, and they're just about to expand on me. You'll see how she's doing. So here she is, just started a nice neat little brood nest, and she has eggs all the way out here. So this queen is looking fantastic right off the hop. I don't necessarily have to find her. As long as every frame goes in here, and as long as every bee goes in there, that I know that she's going to be in this box. I just want to, you know, have a quick look just for a health check. Here's a good frame of brood. This queen is doing absolutely fantastic. Just because sometimes these colonies winter small, a small colony does not mean it's a poor colony. You got to give them a chance. you got to look at all the factors that are affecting the development of that colony and throughout the fall to get them through winter. And you got to look for all these little cues. You give them enough bees and they will go to town. And you'll be able to identify the poor queens. So there's 2 frames of brood. These guys picked the pace up quite nicely. So I haven't found the queen. I must have missed her. Where are you? But I'm not going to waste my time looking for her because I got too much to do right now. She could be on the sidewall. She could put in on the frame I put in already. Would have been nice to see her. It's always nice to see the queen. So I'll make sure every bee goes in there by shaking these bees in. So she has to be in there now. So I counted 2 frames of brood. I want these guys to catch up to the rest of the apiary, so I'm going to drop them a couple more, a frame and a half maybe of brooding bees. So I just spray them with a little bit of Honeybee Healthy mixed with water, really diluted down, because what I want to do is I want to take the new bees on this brood, I just want to confuse them a little bit, so when I drop them in here, they're not in instant fight mode. So that's, you know, not really a frame of brood. Got some brood on there, but lots of bees. So there's 3 frames of brood in here now. And got to make sure boosting the colonies like that they have enough bees in there to be able to cover up all the work you just give them. And I'm running out of brood comb, so I'm dropping foundation around. And I'm going to put a pail of syrup on. Bit of feed, and they will basically just become anonymous within the rest of the apiary. We are just this close to falling so far behind. We got to work and we got to take down the strength within these colonies. So we have all the seconds on. The bees are building up and the queens are already laying those right full of eggs. And all the single hives we left that we have to go through the next week and a half, we're going to go through and equalize the whole apiary before we get back to the seconds to strip off as splits. But before we can strip off those splits, we need to build queen cells. So I sent Carrie around the apiary to pick 5 to 10 breeder hives, so she's assessed everything. She's brought back just the brilliance of my stock. We're so excited about that. And we're going to start grafting either tomorrow or on Thursday. Right now I have the girls looking for queens, and what we're doing is we're skimming off population to make builders. Before we can take these splits off, we need queen cells mature. We'll graft 60 cells every day. Found her? Where is she? Oh, she's a beauty. So we're going to catch that queen, cage her, and then we're going to strip all the young bees, or not all the young bees, but a good proportion of the young bees from this colony into our builder. So once we find her, we put her in a clip. It just keeps the queen safe. And then we come through and we strip the colony of bees and we shake them into our builder, which we have set up already. We have honey, pollen, graft, pollen, honey, foundation, and feeder. And we'll fill this thing right up with bees. We'll take it back to the home yard, and then we'll park a box of foundation underneath of it just for a place to put the bees. So basically the idea of what we're doing is we're identifying these big strong colonies, and we're basically just stripping all the bees. We're harvesting the bees from them, to be able to use in our builders. So these bees occupied 2 boxes. We removed the bees from the top. We took some bees from the bottom. We're keeping them set up in this situation because they're packed full of brood. They're going to fill us up again. My whole mindset has changed from a week ago, where we're trying to keep everything conservation minded. We're trying to give them room. We're not worried about keeping them tight anymore. We're giving them space to expand into, because now is the time when they're growing, and this is when they're going to swarm. Dandelions are just about to flow, and these trees have packed these colonies full of brood. These guys are growing. We're seeing nighttime lows of 5s, 8s. We're seeing daytime highs up into the 20s, 25s. So these are ideal conditions to grow their spring colonies. So we got to be able to stay ahead of these girls, because if we don't, they'll swarm off on us. So right now is high time. We got to get busy. So I get asked all the time, how do I know my builder is full enough of bees? I always say it's with the frame test. We want the frame just to be able to, gradually, when we put it in, just kind of gradually fall down in. So the bees are kind of holding the frame up, and it just kind of gradually goes down. That's when you know you have enough bees in here. So we're going to take this back to the yard, and we're going to put a box of foundation underneath, just a place for the bees to hang. We're going to give these guys lots of feed, and we're going to let them sit queenless for about 2 days before we drop a graft in. I'm not worried at all about these bees flying away on me when I dump them in here. If the bees fly back to a colony, we don't want them anyways. Those are old bees. We want the young bees, the ones that stick around. Those are the ones that are going to draw out the cells. So here's one builder complete. So I'm going to run 8 builders. I'm going to run 2 builders at the same time, because I want 60 cells drawn every day. I'll be dropping 30 cells into one builder, 30 cells into the second builder, and just keep going down the line within my 4-day rotation. So I want 60 cells maturing every day. 10 days from now, or 10 days from when we first set the graft in, we'll have 60 cells ready every single day, every day. Carrie's going to be busy Thursday and on, and every afternoon she'll be dedicating a couple hours of her time grafting and making me queens. So the bees have finally taken flight this afternoon, and we're just digging in. Carrie's just about to do another graft, but I wanted to check on the graft she did yesterday. Ooh, look at the wealth in there. So you know you have enough bees when you have bees hanging at abundance like that. That's awesome. And we'll just look for blanks. It's hard to see because there's so many bees, but I'm not seeing any.
There's one on the top and one on the bottom.
So that makes 28 out of 30. We'll mark that down in our book. So we have this graft in slot A, and between it we have pollen, fresh pollen from this year. We have some NutriBee patty on. There's nothing in slot B yet, and we're feeding them syrup. There isn't any dandelions coming in yet, but we're providing them enough sugars through the syrup to build the wax out. We'll just check in the second builder. Got cold last night. Got down to about -4. But these bees have really perked up. It must be close to 15 now. So this builder set up the same way. Our graft frame we put in yesterday, and then this foundation's in here just to take up a spot. We'll put, this is slot B, we'll fill that in 3 days. And an abundance of bees again. Ooh, there's a lot of bees in there. So we don't like to disturb them too much through this process, but we have to know how many cells we have going, just so we can prepare better. And I'm not seeing any on that one. That's 30 out of 30, that one. So we can mark down 58. Got our tags going. So on slot A, we have builder 3, breeder 2 hearts. I've been marking everything with cards because I couldn't find leather stickers.
The other builders need to be marked too. Sorry.
Guess I haven't done that. We will do that today. Grafted on the 16th. We're going to transfer them into the incubator on the 24th and then into our nukes on the 26th. So we better have some nukes ready by the 26th to drop some. You could drop at least 58 cells in. And we're going to check them. No, they hatch on the 28th. And then we check them a couple weeks after that for acceptance. So this card is going to follow this frame into slot B in a few days, and then it's going to follow the cells into my incubator, and then all this information will be recorded on the tags that we on the nukes that we put these cells into, just to keep track of everything. And this way, after the work's done at the end of the day, I can come and see what's going on, what has been done, what hasn't been done. I don't have to interrogate Carrie all the time on work and all this kind of good stuff. So this is the builders going on now. So we have 2 frames, 2 graft frames, one in that colony and one in this colony. They were put in this morning so the bees can clean them up. Carrie's just going to pick out a frame out of our breeder colonies here, and she's going to graft in her truck. So good luck. So Carrie and I are making our way around the apiary, just doing what we can. So we're putting some feed on these colonies, we're adding space to the big ones, and just kind of preparing the yards so we can, once it gets warm, we can actually work with these damn bees. That their cess is a little bit smaller, so we don't drop them here. So this one's counting 9 frames of bees underneath. So we'll have to come through and quickly pull 2 brood frames. I'm anticipating from a colony like this, and boost up a small one or whatever. So we got to pay attention to these ones right away, as soon as it warms up. And these ones we are going to wait until, and we've got some time on these. But I want to show you a hive that I've come across. We come through and we call out all the weak ones. So a small little dwindled colony. And a small coming out of the shed. There's no real sign of, poop or anything on it. They're not messy inside, they're just small. And I just want to show you what I'm seeing here. So these guys are low in bee numbers, of course. And they are actively rearing a brood nest. Nice, neat little brood nest with hardly any bee numbers. We've got ourselves a little queenie here. She looks, you know, she doesn't look bad, so she could be a fresh queen even. On the tag we have, yeah, 2018, so this queen is a newish queen. So we're sporting a little wee nest. So that's all the bees she has to work with. So my question is, why has this nest dwindled, whereas the rest of my apiary has thrived? Like even my small little nest, my little nukes coming out of the shed, they have taken a small cluster of bees and, you know, turned 2-3 frames of brood already. These guys are just struggling to keep a patch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this colony back to the home yard. I'll likely kill her off because, I mean, I need the equipment, and poor performance for whatever reason. I don't want this in my stock, so she's likely going to be killed off. I'm going to take a sample of these bees and I'm going to analyze them underneath my microscope, and what I'm going to be looking for is primarily nosema. I'm thinking that this nest probably fell to the circumstances of nosema. We can't see anything, and we know nosema is kind of like that silent killer now. It leads to that whole disorganization of the nest, kills off those workers a lot sooner than they should be. Those young bees, you know, the whole dynamics, the worker dynamics within that nest completely changes with nosema. It just throws a whole nest on its head, and they can't physically rear enough brood to be able to keep up with their attrition. And you can't see it. There's no physical signs of it whatsoever. There's the impression out there amongst beekeepers that nosema. This cold, windy weather is extremely frustrating. We have so much brood work we got to do, and we just can't. I mean, it's 8 degrees right now and windy, and we just can't get into these hives to be able to effectively get a lot of work done. Like, I am pushing a lot of my workload ahead by doubling up the strong ones, which is good. But I'm going through the apiary now. We can't do any brood work because of the wind and because of the coolness. And running out of time. I'm looking at the forecast. We're looking at possible rain coming at us for a few days. And to be able to get through the entire apiary as I need to be able to thin down these strong ones that'll swarm on me if we don't get through them, and boost up these weak ones, the math isn't adding up, and we're just not going to get the work done. I'm going to lose some bees to the trees here. So today, using this cool, windy day, any way I can, Carrie and I are going through the last half of the apiary, and we're just identifying the strong ones that are too strong. They're going to be swarming on us right shortly here, and we're adding boxes on top of them. So that kind of pushes that workload out a little bit, buys us a little bit of time. And then for in the few days that we are going to be able to get out and do some actual beekeeping here, we'll be able to go through the apiary a lot quicker and thin down stronger ones that aren't in the verge of swarming, and boost up the weaker ones within the apiary here. So it's I might sound like I'm complaining here a little bit, and I guess I am, but the fact of the matter is the apiary is in really good shape. We've experienced a really cool spring. Dandelions haven't started flowing yet. The trees are hardly leafing out. It's middle of May already. What is it, May 19th? Grass is hardly even growing yet. Very slow spring, but they've had access to pollen. They've packed these nests full of pollen. We've been on top of them with syrup. We've fed them supplement. We've managed these nests to a cool spring. We've kept them tight, and you know, maybe a little bit too tight, but we're just, you know, we're walking that line, walking that edge. We might lose a few to swarms here. So yeah, we're just going through and we're just identifying these monsters that we thought maybe weren't as big as they are right now, and we're just adding seconds, just pushing that workload out. We're going to have queens ready in about 7 days, so hopefully the weather turns here and starts, warming, allows, for the bees to get out and fly sooner than 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Allow those queens to get out. Perfect opportunity to mate. We got to kick this wind. We got to kick the coolness. So lots is progressing within the apiary right now, but you have to understand the way I manage my bees. By not importing queens like I do, I put a lot of risk on, on the weather that we need to be able to mate the queens that we rear here. So we're pushing the workload back. We're pushing it back as far as we can. We're hoping for nicer weather. We're laying our bets that further we go through spring here, eventually things are going to turn and eventually start warming. So that's one thing to be said about the way I'm running my operation here, is I'm eliminating the one costly risk of importing queens. The costly part of the queens being 40, 45 bucks. I'm risking that I'm bringing in duds. I'm bringing in queens that just won't perform for me. Got tired of all that stuff. But the same hand, by managing my own queen rearing operation, being in Manitoba, we are influenced with weather conditions. And if the weather doesn't improve, if things don't smarten up and turn around here, we may be stripping off all the surplus strength, drop cells in, to fall absolutely flat. These queens don't mate. Simply put, we might as well just shake those bees out in the grass. So there's a lot riding on the weather right now. There's a lot riding on my management right now. But I just gotta maintain my persistence here. Let things happen, let things roll out as they do. Just roll with the punches. Be as patient as I can. Let's tip back a couple hives here. So a hive like this, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 frames. These guys are okay. Don't have to worry about these guys. We'll come through, and I bet you they count just perfect. We'll take or we'll skim from them, one or the other. Okay, tipping back colonies like this on the other hand. Just get him off the bottom boards. You can see all the cups there. Just checking them. There's no eggs in them yet, but they are definitely preparing to swarm if I don't get space onto these guys. So this is a hive that I've identified needing a second. So now I've just reassessed them as being, too big. We're putting a second on them. We're not going to get to these guys in time. So they get a second. We push back the work, a week and a half. We'll deal with them later. And by the looks of it, when I'm counting 10 frames, just bulging like this, building cells at the bottom, these guys are probably sporting 6 frames of brood inside. So by putting a box on top, they'll move up there, they'll lay out a nice little nest up top, and they'll make the split for me to take. So I'm going to put a second on them. I'm going to let them make up the split themselves instead of us having to go through and sort everything out, just to help manage my workload and just to, push some of this work ahead so we can kind of keep on top of things. Boy, is this ever nice. So here I come across one of my nukes that I put on top of a great big hive. I've separated the 2 boxes with a queen excluder, so the bigger unit can come up and merge with the smaller unit up top. And I'm just going to dig down into this top unit to see what kind of a brood nest they're sporting, and then I'm going to strip it off to take it to the next yard to fill in a dead spot. I kind of forgot this guy was here. see how things are going. Eggs, larvae. So she's been accepted. I'm looking at 10 frames of bees up here, and they're filling it full of honey naturally, because a big unit like this, they'll naturally store the honey up top like this all the same, even if there's 2 queens. This queen's going to demand more space though, so she's going to push it to the edges, right? Beautiful. We have ourselves the old nest here. I don't know if you can see that. The old nest is here, and then she's expanded the new nest out. The old nest and the new nest is all the way out. There's 2 frames with brood on. Same here, here's the queen. One. These guys look really good. So I'm going to strip them off. Let's say there's, how far does it go? Here's a good sheet of brood. So I'd count these guys about 2 frames of brood, but there's about 5, this is right full of larvae. Just because of the staging I put into this hive, there's about 5 frames filled with brood. Younger brood, not capped. I only count the capped brood. So there's about 2 frames of brood here. I am going to give them just a little boost to it. Okay, so these guys have 3 frames of brood. I'm going to strip them off this hive, so it's going to shock them just a little bit, because their whole house dynamics change. This is what the nest looks like now. I imagine there's like 4 or 5 frames of brood down here, according to what the top looks like. So once I take this off, they're going to lose their floor. So these guys will adjust a lot easier than these guys, because all of a sudden that big cluster like this all of a sudden is taken off. I'm going to put another box on top of these guys just because I anticipate they're pretty strong. I'll tip them back and take a look. These guys will be taken to the next yard. I do all my hive assessment from underneath. It's just what I do. I can tell so much about a colony by looking underneath of it. I can tell where the brood nest is. I can tell approximately how many brood frames are in here. I can tell the girth of the colony just by the way they build out in the bottom frames. If they're thinking about swarming, you know, they got cups going on there. If they are swarming, they have larvae, so it turns into queen cells. These guys need another box. So that is awesome. What we did is we've taken strength from this, boosted up this colony, made this a viable colony. They're going to produce me a lot of money now. I'm going to put another box up on top and possibly skim another split off these guys. Here, just looking absolutely great. I'm looking at the top here because you know how I was saying the brood nest was like that, right? Well, I can see exactly what's going on in these brood frames because there was no ceiling here. The ceiling was up here, so the brood frame's extending right past between the 2 boxes. So I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, these guys are big. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these guys are strong enough now that they're going to build into a second and give me perhaps another nuke or split or something like that. So we can mark that one up as a success. So here's another cool windy type day, not suitable at all for making queens. Carrie's just digging through one of the breeders. Trying to find some appropriate age larvae. Find anything there?
I'm trying.
Kind of getting old on you.
Yeah, she's this frame down. But all of her brood down there is either eggs or capped.
So we don't really have a process set up for our breeders yet, where we can find the queen to a certain frame to lay and make the job a lot easier. But we simply just have our breeders within the yard, and Carrie just digs in and pulls out a frame that looks suitable. Carrie does all the grafting in her truck. So let's sneak in here. So how's things going?
It's going.
Good. So here's that grafting tray that we got from DC Gadgets. It works alright, eh?
Yep.
Holds
I
the
just have
frame
to
all
adjust
nice.
my wheel a little bit.
Oh yeah. So the tilt sets your angle the way you want it. Frees up your hands a bit. What's that up here for?
So I can flip it over when I'm switching.
Oh, just to keep things humid.
Yeah.
I see.
That's the hope that's how it works.
So you found a frame.
Not in one of the ones that I wanted to find a frame in. I just went straight to the one that I knew would have a frame.
Oh. It's a tough day to find frames. And these ones are done?
Nope, not yet.
So these were in the cell builders and they look nicely polished. Frame has been moved from slot A into slot B now. As you can see, there's a mass of bees within this space, and that's what we want to see. The builder's just packed full of bees. First graft in. Grafting on days like today requires quite a bit of luck. But you know what Carrie says about luck. So as you can see, it's a much nicer day today. We're just going to dig into the builders to see what kind of success we actually had on those graft frames that we put into here yesterday. So I'll let Carrie count. So there's a blank at the end there, 1.
So far I see 4.
4 blanks. This one here is a blank, I think.
Yeah. I'm counting it as one. Oh, that one's blank too.
So 5?
Yeah, 5.
So that's 25 out of 30. That's what you want to see on your starting cells. So those were put in this time yesterday. Okay, so it's 25. Let's see if we got another one. Let's see, 1 blank from here. Look at those bees feeding the larvae there. See that? I don't know if you... I'm only counting 1.
Yeah.
So that's 29 out of 30.
Well, I think they need younger bees. The wax is darker.
So we will be adding bees. So that's pretty good. 25 out of 30 and a 29 out of 30. Pretty tough conditions yesterday. What I'm going to get Carrie to do today is I'm going to get her to dig through all the breeder hives and find 1 slab of brood per hive, and I'm going to put a slab of brood in each one of these builders. So I have slot A, I have a graft frame. Slot B, I have a graft frame. We're going to take this pollen frame out in the center and we're going to drop in a brood frame. And this will give these builders a nice boost of real young bees. Typically I've been cursing brood frames in my builders, but we don't have time to go shake bees in here, so we're just going to drop some brood frames in. But In 10 days, we're going to take these brood frames out regardless. That way we don't get caught with any kind of rogue emergency cells. I'll give you that box shortly.
Are you sure you want me back?
What's that? Oh, if you don't mind.
Just drop it.
I feel honored when you see show. There's a bee here!
Found a queen. So we're just going through the apiary and skimming from the big ones, giving to the small ones, of course. Before we boost up a smaller colony, we have to do an assessment to make sure they're viable. So we're basically counting frames of brood. Just looking at, do a health check on the queen, and just assessing the brood nest to see what's going on. So frame full of eggs. Frame this side's full of pollen. So they have lots of resource in the colony, that is good. Working into a brood nest here, so it looks real nice. Solid brood pattern is always a good sign. Both sides, lots of bees. Bees are a little cranky this morning because it rained last night, and actually got going early this morning, 9 o'clock, which is a treat. So they're just a little edgy. Here's another full frame of brood. I'm counting 2 frames of brood for this colony, which is really nice. Good brood pattern. And that's it for the brood nest. This side is some stored syrup. And I missed the queen. There's the queen. A little blocky, so she's in good shape. So there's 2 frames of brood here. And I'm counting, this week I'm counting 3 going on to 4. So I want to add 2 frames of brood to this colony. But first thing I'm going to do is switch this box out because it's no good. Okay, so I have 2 frames of brood. And I want to boost them 2 frames. I'll go into my surplus brood box. A second frame of brood. And some bees. So the colony's been given a boost, and it should fall in line with the rest of the apiary now. So I'm just working through this colony, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames of brood. And it looks really good. This queen is doing a really good job. I've already found her. She's right here. This tag is saying she was put in here in 2017, and she probably is the queen from 2017. She's looking just a little bit old. They get a little bit shiny. But she's doing a terrific job in here, which is great. But as I work through the colony, as I come to skim out a few frames of brood, what I find is these supersedure cells. This one's capped and this one's still being developed. So these cells are gold. This queen is doing a great job right now, but she's old and she's not failing yet. These guys that identified, she's probably at the end of her life cycle or whatever. They know something I don't. They've already developed a replacement here and a plan B right there. So I am leaving these 2 cells in this colony to requeen this old queen here. Just get a visual on her before I put her back in. She's right here. Here's another cell here. So I'm going to take one frame of brood from these guys. And I'm going to leave those cells there for replacement. And I'll let them just carry out their natural process here. And hopefully they requeen themselves. And if they requeen themselves, then maybe there's another 2 years of life in this colony. And in 2 years from now, maybe I'll be looking back at this 17 and saying, hey, that's a pretty good colony. So I feel it's important as beekeepers that we recognize what's going on within the colony before we act. We got to know what these queen cells are doing. If they're swarm cells, then we didn't do our job properly and we have to reorganize the nest to be able to keep the bees. We got to realize that a lot of these cells are simply replacement cells, and we got to let this hive carry out its natural process. Those are the best queens. I need 2 frames of 1 frame of honey maybe and an empty frame. Another cool and breezy morning this morning. Wearing my jacket again. It's end of May and I'm still beekeeping with my jacket on. As you can see, these hives, we put syrup on them yesterday because we're just trying to hold them through the next 2, 3, 4 days of cool weather as predicted, making sure they have enough food. And you can see we had a cool morning this morning and they're venting out, they're curing the syrup and they're venting out the moisture out of the front entrance. You typically see that in the fall, not end of May. So at any rate, these hives we've been able to maintain their continual growth. We've been keeping feed on them. We've been promoting everything we can to, excel that nest, to move it forward. But at the same time, they've had lots of pollen coming in, so they've had lots of natural feed coming in throughout. We've been able to fill in the interruptions of that pollen inflow with supplement. And I know that our supplemental feeding has provided tremendous benefit. Just with the little bit of trial I'm doing on the farm here, we've been playing around with different types of patty, different types of protein supplement, and comparing my trials against the negative controls, it is substantially different. We're looking at 30% increased growth just simply by providing protein to the hives, which is significant, especially through a year like this year. These bees are getting the natural stuff, but there's so many interruptions. You think about food inflow. You have pollen come in, then there's a dearth, and pollen come in, then there's a dearth. It's, up and down, up and down. And every time that colony falls into a bit of protein stress because they fall into a dearth, that stress opens up opportunity for disease to come in. That stress just slows the growth of the colony down, just kind of staggers it. So the whole objective with feeding supplement is to try to, instead of allowing the colony to go into that valley, just to keep a steady and gradual incline of colony development. And that is the objective behind these patties, just to provide some consistency, some predictability to these colonies, just to provide a little bit of assistance to these colonies as they try to develop through, especially developing through cool springs like this. And what I'm finding is the bottom box here is roughly, the good old 4 frames of brood. And the top box, we're counting to see how much strength we're able to take away, and for the most part we're finding the top box has been nicely, you know, capped over. She's provided a nice nest for us up top. So basically we're just going through and counting the frames of brood in this top box. Boy, these guys, they've already started working out in the foundation, storing away nectar. We finished feeding, like these pails are on, but they've been empty for a week. This is fresh nectar coming in. Storing away the honey. And a nice frame of brood. So this brood is capped over. So that's going to be excellent to send off into this split. Here's one good frame of brood. Pulling into another beautiful frame of brood. I'm not seeing too much open larvae up here, so she's established this nest up top, and they started filling up with nectar. So they've almost as if they're pushing her back down. So as these frames down here hatch, she'll be naturally moving down there to fill those up. Third frame of brood. There she is. Beautiful little queen. Because I found her, I'm going to treat her with the dignity that she deserves. So now I know she's down in that bottom box. So, you know, there's about 2.5 frames of brood in this split we're about to take away. I don't have to shake any more bees off because I know the queen's down there. Here's another frame of brood. So this is going to make a nice little split. Right now I'm just assuming there's 4 frames of brood down here, but through the colonies we've been working through so far, generally there's 3 to 4 frames of brood down below. So for the sake of time, if they're a little bit stronger, we'll be coming through with another equalization round once we get these seconds back on. After we take the split, after we get these seconds back on, we'll be coming through for another equalization round to be able to catch the ones that we maybe left a little bit strong. If they're a little bit weak, that same round we're going to be boosting them up a little bit during that same equalization round. But for the sake of what we're trying to do right now is we're taking away all the surplus strength. So this queen has provided us a very nice little split up top. She's done all the work. She's back down the bottom. Queen excluder's in. The bees are going to come up, cover it off, and we just simply strip this off. And this will develop into just a beautiful little colony. So this morning the graft frames in slot B would have been transferred to the incubator. Frame in slot A would have been brought into slot B, and then the new graft frames dropped into slot A. So the graft frame just goes from slot A to slot B into the incubator, and we just do that all the way down the line. Works really slick. It's easy to keep things on track and predictable. It's easy to visualize this kind of stuff. So I have the incubator set at 93 degrees. And should be around 60% humidity. 2 days of cells in here now. And the first set should be ready tomorrow, but we don't have any nukes ready yet. Let's take a peek. These are transferred tomorrow. Beautiful little cells. We won't have the nukes ready tomorrow, so we'll have to transfer them hot on Monday. So that's good. This thing's working just perfectly like it did last year. Should be able to cycle the cells through, and I gotta get some nukes ready. So it's 9 o'clock this morning and it's over 20 degrees already. So that's quite the treat. So I have the girls out putting seconds on all the single hives. So everything needs to be in 2 boxes now. We're seeing tremendous growth, and with that growth we're seeing a lot of resource coming in right now. All the fruit trees seem to be trying to catch up to the delay that we've had this spring. All the dandelions are out, all the berries are out, all the fruit trees are coming out, so we just have an abundance of resource coming in, trying to keep ahead of everything. Same with Carrie and I. Right now we're transferring nukes. Our nukes were a little bit behind this season just because, well, the nukes pretty much kept pace with all the rest of the apiary as far as the calendar. So we are just transferring these nukes into single boxes right now, and they're busting at the seams. We have 4 frames of brood in these little boxes that are just on the verge of emerging, and we need to get them into single boxes just to be able to give them the space they need, especially with all this resource coming in. So we're going through, we're scrambling, we're trying to get all these nukes transferred into single boxes. That, and we need all these nukes to be able to split off our hives. So I don't have any budget for boxes this year, so we're juggling the split boxes on the colonies, emptying them out into these 6-frame nukes, and then taking the boxes back to transfer the nukes into, take these 6-frame nukes out to capture the split. So it's pretty busy, but things are going very well. These bees look fantastic, and we're just on the verge of getting so far behind. But we have good weather ahead of us. We should be able to, if we could put in some very nice long days here, we should be able to keep ahead of everything that needs to be done and just enjoy the wealth while it's here. So I have these nukes, they're stationary. So I have 2 entrances that way and 1 entrance that way, and that just helps. When we fill these up with bees and drop a cell in, we set them out to mate. We just keep everything on the single pallet. So because of that, you can't move these around. So what we're trying to do is, as we're transferring into our single boxes, we're trying to keep that box ahead of the entrance so the bees don't get as confused when they fly back. When they try to fly back into their colony, they fly back into their transferred nest. There's a lot of drift issues when we do this transfer, so we do everything we can to minimize the issue. It helps to have these entrances I have, you know, they look a little silly, but this color sure helps with the bees orientate themselves to the new nest. So we transfer the entrance to this box just for a day or two until they get accustomed to their new home, and just try to minimize that drift best we can. Medication is out. So we're going through, and well, this is a full frame of pollen. So we're going through basically, and we're counting all our brood to 3 frames. We have some stronger in 3 frames, we have some weaker. We're just trying to even out the whole yard to 3 frame strength. So we're leaving this yard a little bit smaller than the singles within the rest of the apiary. But my goal is to have this entire yard of even strength, so then we can manage them as a single unit. So all my nukes are going to be a certain strength and they need certain tension at certain times. So I don't have this varying strength between hives within the bee yard. It just adds too much workload. If we can keep everything at one strength, then we can target our workload a lot easier. So these guys are being chopped down. I'm determining 3 frames of brood because as we're going through here, there's some stronger, some weaker. So the good even strength, average strength through the whole yard as we take and we give is 3 frames of brood. So that way we don't have any extra brood left over at the end of the yard, and we don't have any hives that are, you know, needing a boost. Beautiful frame of brood. So we're going through and we're just counting 3 frames now. So this hive's not actually going to give any brood. So they have 3 frames, so I'm not going to waste my time looking for the queen. Just going to drop them all in. And if all the bees are in this box, then the queen has to be in there. Cap them all. So transferring nukes is always fun because this is all the work and the effort that we put into our queens last year, and it's really encouraging seeing terrific looking nests coming out of winter and progressing through the spring. This is where our queen rearing program comes full circle. So these girls were established last year with queen cells. We set them up to make us a little bit of honey. We winter them as these little nukes, and then they come out of the winter, we transfer them into our single boxes and they go into the production season. So these, even though I'm chopping these guys down to, or holding these guys at 3 frames of brood, even out through the whole yard, these guys, just with the vigor and that spirit of these new queens, they're probably going to outproduce some of these older queens that are within my apiary. So the average production within this youthful yard, I bet will outproduce some of those yards which have you know, maybe some older queens, some younger queens with a bit of variety. So these queens are very important to rejuvenating that youth, continual rejuvenation within our apiary. Now, there's nothing that makes me more happy than looking at this. You know, nuke after nuke, box of bees. So I'm coming through and I'm counting up my splits. I'm trying to split the whole apiary down evenly. That's my goal, is to make every one of these nukes pretty much exactly the same size. So then when we go back and queen check, we're not encountering these great big nukes and these small nukes, you know. Just makes our job a little bit easier. So what I do when I sort out my split strength into my nukes, I work in kind of a process. So as you can see, I'm running 6 frame nukes. That's what I do. I got 3 of them here. I stock these in a particular way. I call it slot 1, slot 2, slot 3, slot 4, slot 5, and slot 6. So slot 1 and slot 6 automatically get foundation frames. And I need these foundation frames in here just to buy me time. Same as my split when I get behind. It just gets a place for the bees to drop a whole bunch of resource. When these brood frames hatch, all these young bees and all this resource coming in, they got to put it somewhere. So instead of plugging out the nest, they can put it out and build me some foundation here. So put some of that energy into useful work for me. So slot 1 and slot 6 automatically get foundation. So then what I do as I'm sorting it out, slot 2 here automatically gets a food frame. Okay, so when I look down on my equipment here, go down the line as I'm sorting it out, slot 2 is always my food frame. So I sort it out, and I see slot 2 here is empty, that means this one needs a food frame. Slot 3 is a full frame of brood, so one of the big frames of brood. Slot 4, it can be one of those big slabs of brood, or you know, one of those partial slabs. So you know how you count your brood frames. So this is, you know, 2 brood frames, give and take. Slot 5 is the spot, just it's an open spot. It's a frame full of bees. You know, it's a frame that has foundation on it, a frame that has honey on it, a frame that has pollen on it. One of those frames that when you count it, you know, there's brood there, but you can't count that as a brood frame. It's just a partial, eh? And it's got some honey in there, it's got some pollen in here, so slot 5 is always my, you know, what do I do with that frame slot. So this works really well. I set my pallets down, open them up, and as I go through my split strength, as I'm taking away, pull up a frame, assess what it is, and just drop it into the slot. And as you go, you just slot, 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 slot. As soon as it's done, you cap it, and the nuke is done. And that way, more than one person can do a split like this, as long as you know how to assess the frames. You go and you look at slot 1 has to be this, slot 2 has to be this, slot 3 has to be this, slot 4 has to be that, slot 5, and slot 6 is all the same. So more than one guy in the crew can put together the nukes exactly the way that you are. So that's just the way we do it. And it's just, you know, one more of those things. It's, you know, the process behind what I put in this operation just to help make things more efficient. As we keep working here, I'm starting to fall a little bit behind now, And that perfect timing that I was experiencing before now, where, you know, that queen laid that nice, neat little tight brood nest up top for me to take that split away, and is actually going in and sorting it through into nukes, doing just a nice and proper job of it. Well, that timing is past now, and that brood up top is starting to hatch on me, and those bees are backfilling that nest. So I'm not getting quite the precise split as I was when I started the whole process. So because of that, we are scrambling just to strip the boxes off these colonies, just to try to preserve as much of that timing, as much of that brood up top as possible. Some hives are still, you know, I still have that proper timing, but I'm getting some of these bigger colonies that I got to get these boxes off and give them new space. Otherwise, they're just going to swarm off on me. So we have another 6 yards today. I should be able to get it through today, get it all off. And then all we have to do is drop cells in as they mature. Oh, and I can't wait to be done this already. We've been working hard. I've been working 15-hour days for the last 2 weeks just to get this job done. This is probably one of the hardest jobs there is on the honey farm, is just going through and managing the split, just managing the strength, setting these hives up for the flow, trying to catch all that momentum these hives are building and slingshot it into the flow. This is the time of year where we have to put the time in, and this is the time of year we have to focus, because this is when we build our crop. If we screw up now, then we got to wait till next year. We got to set these hives up properly. We got to maintain this momentum and just capitalize on everything they got going for us. So I wish I could have seen these hives last fall when I was freaking out all winter, doing my math, figuring all my hives were going to die. These hives just look absolutely terrific. These queens are spectacular, just laying sheets of brood. I mean, they didn't quit laying sheets of brood since the beginning of May, and that's what's bought me all these bees right now. A lot of weight's been put on queens on my operation, and for a good purpose. It's because queens is one of the major factors on the productiveness of the colonies within the apiary. At any rate, just parked the truck right in the way of all the bee traffic and starting to get a little buzzy in here, so I better strip off these boxes and get to work already. So I have my crew following behind me in the yards. I didn't bring second honey boxes with me. They're coming through after I'm done, and they're putting seconds on everything that I've gone through, which saves me a little bit of work. These hives are pulling off pretty heavy. You can see one of the reasons why I have the foundation on the outside, just from a place to drop that energy when I fall behind and when this resource is coming in so strong. So that's working out well. These hives are filling up with honey, nice and heavy, so I won't have to feed these guys. I'm looking at about a 3-frame brood frame up here. See how they're starting to follow my timing. This mature brood is just hatching, and they're filling it up with honey, and as the brood emerges, they're backfilling it and they're pushing everything down. So I have 3.5 frames that look like this up top. Got to get these boxes off now to be able to capture this the strength that I had these hives set up for me. My bottom box I know has like 4.5 frames of brood down there. My top box has about, you know, 3.5, 2.5. See how they're emerging there and they're backfilling it. I got to get these off right now. So that's why we're stripping these boxes. Just basically getting it done as fast as we can now because we're falling behind. No time for screwing around, making nukes and such. We gotta go. And if it's not evened out, maybe some of this got pushed down and maybe the bottom box is a little bit strong. You know, I'll sort that out the next time through. But the main objective is to capture the split before they swarm off. Just to try to maintain this momentum of this colony so they don't stagger. And I believe I'm right on top of it. As long as I get a good day in today, then everything's going to be just dandy. But it's all about timing. If you notice anything I do throughout this operation, is I base everything on timing. Trying to set things up and get as much done during those perfect conditions as I possibly can. And if I fall outside of those perfect conditions, I just do the best I can. Just trying to manage the workload and just get her done. So I just finished up making the last of the nukes. That should use up pretty much all the cells we've built already. That is it. That is all the split I'm making. It's just unreal. I've used every single box that I got back at the honey house. Every pallet. I switched back to my old pallets, old shitty pallets. The split was just tremendous. We were able to skim so much surplus off these colonies. It just absolutely amazes me. I wish I could have seen this back last fall when I was freaking out whether or not my beehives are going to be living or not. And all these nukes here, I filled up, must be 175 of these nukes out of 1 yard. I dedicated 1 yard to building nukes. And if I would have known I would have had such a heavy split, I wouldn't have dedicated that yard to building nukes. I would have filled these nukes out of some of that surplus strength. But you know, sometimes you make a plan and you just got to stick to it and just see how things shake out. So now the split is all done. Tomorrow, according to the calendar, now we start checking for queen acceptance and their laying patterns. So this is the first yard we set cells into. The nukes are starting to get lost in the grass here. So I just want to check to see whether or not these guys are actually ready. We've had some really windy weather lately and some really hot weather. So it hasn't really been ideal mating conditions, but we'll see what these girls are up to, and we'll see. I'll just check to see if they started laying or not, and see if maybe we should just give them a little bit more time. So we had some rain yesterday. I noticed the yards are pretty quiet today. Everybody's still sleeping, I guess. These fives are pretty tight. I got 5 frames in here just because I like to keep the frames tight, but I certainly like the 6s better because it gives you just a little bit more space to pull these frames out. These nukes were made up a couple weeks ago. Not much for nectar in there. Got some honey stored, but there's no fresh nectar in that frame. Might have to consider starting to feed again. Just passing the dandelion. Got some old brood on there. There she is. Beautiful queen. Her abdomen is all swollen. And she is laying. So she just started laying there. See how far along her nest is. So this frame is right full of eggs. And so is that side. Boy, she's sure gone. She's come online pretty quick here. This frame has a bit of weight to it, so it's got a little bit of honey in there and some pollen. That's good to see. A little bit of resource. I'll switch that to the other side. So she has just started laying. Or maybe rushing things just a little bit here. So it appears that one's a success. Let's see how that brood matures, but she's laid that frame right out. Man, that was a pretty tough split. We didn't let up at all through the entire, we've been splitting hives for what, it's been 2.5 weeks. I've been working myself to pure exhaustion pretty much every day to get this job done. This is probably the most stressful period for me anyways. Just taking the split, managing the work, getting it all done before these girls swarmed off, setting these hives up for the flow. Because this is the time that counts. This is the time that this is when you prepare your honey crop. This is building your honey crop. Your honey crop is dictated precisely exactly the way you set these colonies up. Set them up too big, they'll swarm off, you got nothing. Set them up too small, by the time they mature, the flow is past. So you got to be watching what's going on out there. You got to be watching what's going on in here, and you got to find out where do you want these hives to peak. Whereabouts on that calendar. You got to try to get these hives to peak exactly when all that summer flower peaks. So we'll see if I'm right.